Welcome to Blue Rain Gallery Podcast with Jody Naranjo today. Jody is not only one of my best friends and great friends, she's one of the top potters, ceramic artists in her genre. And it's an honor to have her here today. Love your hair, by the way.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Very colorful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's talk about where you're from, your heritage, and let's just start there. Maybe where you were born and all that stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm from Santa Clara, Pueblo, and I was born in 1969. So I started making pottery as a little girl. My family everyone in my family's potters. So I grew up around the making, the digging the clays, the firings. And it was just a family effort and a communal thing. So I did that, and by the time I was 5, 6 years old, I was sitting there making little pots. At 15, I was sitting on the Plaza selling them, and in Indian Market and different art shows, and that's all I've ever done. I've been making pottery and for 35 years, so full time.
It's been quite a journey. I have worked with your family for about that long too, about
Yes,
30 years.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story where we're kind of related. I grew up raised as a Mormon, and Jody's grandparents ran the Indian Baptist Church in Taos, and the Mormon church, we shared a fence. And I didn't even realize this connection. I have to tell the story because it relates to you, but it doesn't. It's about your aunt. And I remember coming home from a show in New York, and behind me was your aunt. We call her Jody Naranjo, but she was known as Judy, I think, back in the day.
Yes.
And she taps me on the shoulder and she says, "Your name's Leroy Garcia?" I'm like, "Yes." "Well, where are you from?" I go, "Taos." And she goes, "Oh, I knew a guy in Taos that was in the church next door to me." I was like, "Oh, that was my dad."
Yeah.
And I asked my dad. I think they may have went on a date or two, but that was my first introduction really to the family.
Really? Oh.
And then getting to know your other aunts and Michael and that whole gang. They're all talented. Down to the Swensels and
there's probably 30 of us in my family that are in the arts.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. I think there's more artists than not artists in my family. So and it's painters, sculptors, weavers. I mean, we do everything. Pottery is the main thing, but everybody's branched out into other things as well.
I noticed on the Naranjo side that your style of pottery is different than, say, the traditional stuff that goes on in Santa Clara, where it's carved and it's mostly monochromatic. What's the origination of your style?
Well, my grandmother did the micaceous, the utilitarian pottery. So we would, have those pots to cook in and for household purposes. And I remember my grandfather sitting there with a pot and a nail and carving. He would wrap tape around it and then carve with a nail. So that's the first.
Was it etched in? Or
just etched in with a nail, just an old nail. And he would sharpen it with a file. And so that was my first memory of the etching. I think probably Jody Falwell, my aunt, would have been one that really took it to another extreme with the real contemporary designs. And then I think the rest of us just kind of followed the lead. She's an exceptional potter. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid just watching her and my other aunts, my grandmother, hold these huge vessels and start carving right in the middle, and then it would come out exactly on the other side. And I just would sit there in awe and think, that's what I'm going to do. So, being a potter was just a given for me. I never thought of anything else except that I'm going to do that.
Yeah, but you still had to find your voice, find your way.
Yes.
So how would you differentiate yourself from the gang, right?
Yes.
So how would you define that?
Well, I tried a little bit of everything, and of course you copy as you go. You're copying your mom, you're copying other people. My polishing was never a strong point for me, but my carving was good. I could carve, and my figures weren't realistic. They were very cartoon-like or little animal critters. So I thought, go with what you got. And so I would just start carving the whole pot up and just different scenes and make them funny and cute and happy. And people liked that. So I think that's where I pushed myself in that direction.
I noticed as well about your pottery, you used the entire surface, top to bottom.
Yes.
Where, think about traditional, again, Santa Clara pottery, it started off as just a band.
Yeah, you see like a water serpent or a bear claw.
Or a bear claw, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in essence, it did start with the bear claw, but as far as the first carvings. But I'm wondering when the sgraffito started. I wonder if that was Tony Day and Joseph Lone Wolf's influence.
Yeah, they really brought that in there. It was, I remember and Art Tafoya next door, and there was potters that were doing the Paul Speckle rock.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were doing that sgraffito look, but on a traditional way. And I just was never good at traditional designs or realism. And my shapes were never symmetrical, so I just played with it and let them kind of come out as they wanted. And my carving was fun. I enjoyed it, and I liked, I always had little children next to me, so I would make scenes and say, "This is you, and this is me, and it's our house, and the mountains, and the clouds, and the fish," and I would make little scenes and just to entertain us, or myself, and that's where that came from.
Wow, finding pleasure and happiness in your work, and it translates out because what you're saying is that your work is whimsical, and there's happiness, there's humor to everything that you're capturing, from whether it's about your daughters or running around at the village of Santa Clara or whatever.
Feast days, dancers,
and then stylizing the animal figures. That's.
I make them real cute and cuddly.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody said, "How do you make clay cuddly and cute?" And I was like, "Well, I have my little dogs running around the house. It's pretty,
You put a little love into it. That's how you
I
do
do,
it.
and my daughter was singing, "You always kiss them goodbye when they leave." I said, "I do." I say, "Goodbye, little animal."
So I want to kind of isolate this here so we
Okay.
can talk about it. So when I first met Jody, she was already doing a top to bottom carving, and maybe some of this. What do you call this, crosshatch?
People call it my lace, or and it's very light. It's like sketching on the piece, and I do that as a background. I've been doing that for over 30 years, I would say, and then now I'm graduating into even double layering design. So at some point you can see the background and then other designs. Then the middle band is polished, and then I do the deep etching to bring the girls out. And these girls are doing like a merry-go-round, running around the rosies, and real playful, and their arms are in different ways, and they're happy. And so I have this pot as girlfriends, and I think of it as just this happy group of girls just having fun.
Yeah, we won't name names, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that's evolved is you have started experimenting with acrylics on natural clay.
Yes.
And tell me when that started and what led to that idea.
Gosh, that's been about 10, 15 years. 15 years, I'd say. I think I just picked up some acrylics one day and started playing with them, and I found the metallics, and I found different shades that you could see in the sun at different angles, and I thought, how cool is this? I knew it was crossing a line between traditional and non-traditional, but I thought, I'm going to go for it. So some pieces I will, some I won't. Some people like it, some people don't. But for me, I find it just a fun and different way to express myself through the clay and bring out that traditional designs.
So sometimes does the tradition or the sense of tradition restrict you in the experimentation?
Did
it take you time to cross that?
Yes.
barrier?
Oh yeah. I used to just do a lot of fish and serpents and lizards and turtles, and then once I started doing scenes and I have city scenes and I have cars on them, and I have all kinds of stuff going on these pieces that are skyscrapers, that aren't traditional anymore. So once I crossed that line, it was kind of like, wow, I can have fun with this. The acrylic is another way to go in that direction. So
Well, that was kind of poo-pooed for a long time, huh?
oh yeah,
Putting, any type of
you can't.
non-traditional
And
paint on
also
there?
pottery, when I was growing up, was you wanted it very symmetrical. You wanted everything perfect. Your polishing had to be perfect. There was no room for flaws or errors and now I think we're able to do the asymmetry and the designs that are very modern and textured and overlapping, and I'm real happy that I can get to do that because that makes it a lot of fun.
It's been an interesting pendulum shift, because I remember starting to in this market and noticing like the perfection. Like Nathan Youngblood, it didn't get any more perfect than that.
Absolutely.
It's like the polish was
Absolutely.
pristine, the carving.
Yeah, and I can't compare to that. Yeah. I could never polish like that. That's why I would
It's a whole different
carve.
style.
Yeah, but my carving was good, and I liked doing that. So I think that's where I started leaning more in that direction. Before you know it, I'm carving from top to bottom, inside and the bottom, and everywhere.
Well, it's reflective in your success. For those of you who have never seen her work, I encourage you to go to blueraingallery.com and look at it. But Jody has been a sellout artist on all her shows for the last 35 years or so, right?
I've been very fortunate.
Very blessed.
Very fortunate.
But it's because of your innovative style, the whimsical. I think people relate to that, Jody. They like the personable. They like to connect to something, and it's hard not to connect to your work.
Well, that's what I find is when people will talk to me about the pots, like they can relate to the storyline, to the childlike figures. Moms get it. Kids even will come up and want to touch them and play with them. I have my little clay animals. My daughters would run around the house and hide them and wrap them in blankets, and
I'm going to pull this one. I'm going to put this back. Hold on a second. I'm going to pull this out so people can see it.
Okay.
This is one of the clay animals.
So I started doing these little clay animals just because I always had a kid sitting there. And the way I did it is I would make a seed pot, and then I would make little coils and little balls and stuff, and I would play like Mr. Potato Head with them. And I'd say, here, we're going to make a little body and legs and arms and wings and eyes and a big smile. They always had a big smile. And I did that because my kids loved them. So my kids would have these little clay figures wrapped in blankets and running around, and they'd all have names, and then they'd break them, and then I'd glue them back together. And, I remember being on airplane trips with a clay animal or camping with this clay animal in their arms. And then one day somebody came by the house and said, wow, do you sell these? And I was like, well, no, I make them because my kids like them so much. But it's basically a seed pot and coils and paint, acrylic paint, and so that's how that started. So I've been making these little clay animals for 20 years. And they're all just these cute little figures. This one's a little dog with polka dots, and he's got his big smile and his big curly tail. And then when I fire them, they're hollow. So this is the air hole right here. I thought that's where. Sometimes they're the belly button, or sometimes they're on their bottom. But basically, it's a happy little dog.
You could say it.
Yeah, it's just a little happy little dog. And then Leroy told me one day, he said, these would be really cool in bronze. And I was like, wow, yeah. And the reason I kind of don't like to make these in clay so much is because they get broken.
Yeah.
Kids go at them. Somebody will have their grandkids come over, and they're like, Jody, my grandkids picked up this pot, this animal, and it broke its arms. I spent more time fixing horns and legs and wings and eyes.
Well, at least you could with the acrylic. You could glue it, sand it.
I would, but it still is a lot of work, yeah. So he said, let's make them in bronze. So before you know it, we were making these little animals into bronze, and they've been doing very well, and it's nice because they're permanent. Yeah, so I've been real happy with that.
You made one monumental sculpture.
Yes, and it's at the Smithsonian, which I'm very proud of. And it's a big giant deer named Oscar. And he sits outside of the director's office because the director just fell in love with him. Mm-hmm. But he's there to greet people at the Smithsonian when they walk in the door. Yeah.
Well, the reason we called it Oscar, do you remember?
Yes.
Because when we first got it, I brought the sculpture to Jody, and she held it like she won an Oscar award.
I was like, oh, thank you. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So that's how we came up with the name Oscar. And there's probably just a few left in that edition.
Yes,
Huh?
yeah, we did quite a few of them, and a lot, people have really fallen in love with it. It's a deer. It's a real happy little deer, and then we made the giant one, and and I always called him my dear in the morning when I'd work him. Say, "Good morning, my dear," and then I'd wrap him up, say, "Good night, my dear," and so he was my dear to me, and then he's Oscar.
You've come up with some good names. How about like the spider? We call him George.
Yeah, and he's a furry tarantula.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you make a clay tarantula furry? And I said, I got it. I got this.
You did good on that. That's fun.
I got this. Yeah.
Well, we're excited to continue down that process. I think we have more exploring to do in the bronzing, especially as we get older, right?
Right.
It's our hands don't work.
My hands are not what they used to be. My eyes aren't what they used to be. I shake. I have it's hereditary and internal tremor, so it's hard to do all that etching as I used to. Also, the carpal tunnel and arthritis it's pretty rough on me.
Well, if people take time to look at your work close up, you can see the torture on your hands.
Yeah, so it's nice time for me now that I'm in my 50s to slow down a little bit. My kids are grown. I'm alone. I'm a grandmother, and it's nice that I can work at a slower pace with pottery. It's more enjoyable to me. It's not so hard on my body, and it's just nice to just do a couple shows a year and not be running around trying to work constantly and enjoy life a little bit.
Talking about new directions, the experimentation we did in bronze, a few years ago, I took you on a trip to Seattle for what we called the first collaboration with Preston Singletary, and. You kind of knew what you were going to do, or you kind of didn't. Tell us about that whole journey. Also, especially the first time in the glass shop looking at the color rods.
Okay. Well, when we came up with the idea to do the collaboration with Preston, I didn't understand color and light. Pottery is basically you have three colors to work with, and there's not any light that comes through. So, of course I thought of my designs and my shapes. So drew them out, and we went out there, and Preston goes, pick out colors. And I was like, okay, well, brown and gray and, black. And then he goes, no, come on, Jody, come on. So I go, well, what do I have? So he opened up a door in this room, and there was a million colors, and I was like, wow. So by the end of the day, I'm saying turquoise and purple and, glitter.
Blue, cobalt blue.
I was like, so the color was just very exciting for me. The pots, I still call them glass pots, but they're basically the same designs and shapes I use. Like this one has the pueblo houses, and then the fish, which is the Rio Grande, the hills with the trees, the mountains with the snow, and then my women, which are again holding hands with the tablitas, and they're just all happy holding hands, and so they are still my pottery designs. And then this piece it's a traditional membranes design, and it's the design was called cattail deer holding fish. So it was a deer that was holding fish, and people always said, what does it mean? I said, I don't know, it's just on this old membranes design. So I've changed it into different animals holding the fish, and this one is a mirror image, and it's a ram holding fish. So that's where that design comes in. That's traditional to me. So that's where these kind of designs come in. And working with Preston, it's just been an incredible journey. This is our third collaboration together. And every time I learn something new, I'm learning how to design the glass in a different way, how to look at the light coming through. And of course, how the color shades go from top to bottom. So it's fun. I mean, it's a fun thing. And seeing them today for the first time, it got really, it's like Christmas Day. I get to see it for the first time, and how they look, because
they're beautiful.
They came out great. I'm really excited about this whole project.
You've learned how to design on glass. Can you give a little description of the part you played on that? Besides just coming up with the imagery, what else did you do?
I draw out the shapes, and then Preston and the other guys, they get in there and they make them, and we pick the colors out so that each one has the color scheme. When I design pottery, I don't sketch them out on paper first. I've never done that. I don't draw them out first. I start on one side with a knife and I just go around it. So it's impossible for me to design the piece before it's in my arms. So what I do is I just hold it and look at it, and I just start carving. I do a relief pattern, so I take out the background and I'm carving the design so that the relief comes through, so you can see the light coming through. And I just start on one side and I go around till it's done and add little things here and there.
These pieces used to be a solid color on the exterior. And after Preston blows it, he puts a tape over it. And then he sends it to Jody, and Jody's talking about the process where she cuts it out. But she'll design parts and then for lines or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, just the process of cutting tape is not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's different. It's very different. There's not room for error, for sure. And, you have to hold your knife very straight. I've been holding my knife for 30 years like this, and I'm learning it to hold it like this. And then I'm pulling out the tape. I'm looking at it from the inside out through the sun. I spend a lot of time outside looking in the sun to see what I'm doing, because it's, you can't see what you're doing with the tape. You can't see the piece underneath. So you're kind of working with blinders on.
Mm-hmm. Also, we should probably talk about how the glass is constructed. So Preston takes the drawing and he puts it on a clipboard, and he has his calipers, and so they can get pretty close to the exact shape that
Yes.
Jody's drawing on paper. But how it starts is they pick up a clear glob of glass out of the furnace. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, they've prepared a cup of color, or they get what we call glass frit, which is just powdered glass. So they'll basically, if they put it in a cup, they'll roll the clear glass into a point, and in the meantime, somebody's prepared a color cup, and they put that dip into there. So all of these glass pieces you have can either have 1, 2, 3, or 4 layers, or how many layers you want of color. And it's interesting, the cup, because it just rolls it over, and that provides the color. Now, sometimes you can just take that clear and kind of blow the form and then shake the glass on there, the glass color, to give that other thing. The other thing to point out about Jody's work here is there's a mixture of parts of the glass where the sheen has been blown off,
Yes.
and then parts where the sheen has been left
dull.
on.
And that's kind of how I do in my pottery too. I do sections with the shiny and dull.
Yes.
And that's a big contrast for me. So Preston brought that in so that it reflects on the same kind of, like this would have been polished on my pottery, and this would have been the base clay color. So you get the shiny and the dull like I do on my pottery.
Yeah, and so there's going to be 15 pieces.
Yes.
15 pieces, and these will be coming up for sale soon. I think we're about ready to launch.
Yes.
But the opening is March 26th from 5 to 7 p.m. And as this state is opening up, we encourage everybody to come on
Yes.
out.
I'll
Bring your
be here.
masks. Blue Rain Gallery is 10,000 square feet of love, so there's plenty of space. I'd like to encourage you to do that. So the next part of this interview, I want to talk about what we talked with Chris Papan about a little bit, and that's the opportunity to have your imagery printed on objects. Under the Blue Rain Print Shop, we've designed and released all kinds of fun things.
Fun things.
Tell me how you feel about that, what you like about it, and show us a little bit about the products that you have.
Okay. Well, this is a design that, I'm very well known for, is my women holding pottery, and the pueblos and the hills and the mountains. And I just drew it out on paper and with paints and markers and stuff, and which was a lot of fun. And we made it into different merchandise. This is my personal bag, which I absolutely adore, a notebook. And
What do you like about the notebook you showed us?
I love it. I love the size. I love the pockets for my little things. I just carry it around with me, and then I just love that size. It goes in my bag. And then I have my mug. And I have a suitcase, so when I'm traveling, I have my mug and my purse and my suitcase.
You look all stylish. You sent us that shot. For reference, go to our Facebook. We did post that. You can also go to Jody Naranjo's Facebook, and you'll see a post of that image of her on her travels.
And what I love about this is, the childlike figures. I was able to pull in color, and it has a drawing feeling like on your refrigerator, your daughter's drawing on your refrigerator. So that's what I liked about it. It had that feeling, and I thought moms will relate, kids will relate. And it's just a different. It's got the sketch feeling. I didn't detail it to the point where it's perfection, so you get to see that it's all hand done. I'm working on one now with my animals, a collage, but I'm using all clay colors and paints only. So that one will have the perfection and the
We had talked
feel.
about some ideas how to approach that. How's that going?
Well, I looked at wood, and because I want it to look like it was done on clay, and it'd be so hard to make a clay plaque big enough and carve it and all that. So I looked at boards and gesso and paint. But at this point, I am on some huge, thick like boards, and I've painted them, and I'm drawing, and I did the sketch that I do on my pottery, the background, and I have about 15 different animals.
Oh, nice.
And they're all clay colors. So I was hoping to be done today so I could bring it to show you. But I should be done with it in the next few days. It's almost done, but I'm real happy with the way it's coming out.
Yeah, look for some new releases in Jody products.
And it'll be in all of these same products.
And what do you think about these mugs? Aren't these great?
Oh, I love them.
And they keep the stuff
And
hot
it's
longer.
vibrant. I just love the vibrancy of how everything came out. The bag is just phenomenal, and the inside is really nice. It's got a nice suede lining and pockets, and it just feels good. It's a perfect
well,
size.
It looks
for
good
me.
on you too. So
Thank you.
You're all stylish.
I'm real happy with my stuff, Leroy.
Well, we'd like to thank Jody for coming in today and podcasting it up.
Thank you for having me.
Blu-ray and Gallery podcast.
Thank you for supporting me for all these years.
We love you. You're
I
a
love
fantastic
you.
person.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe to us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. New episodes come out every other week. You can also see it on the Blu-ray and Gallery under podcast, and on our Facebook and our Instagram. So thank you again.
Thank you, Leroy.
Until next time, Blu-ray and
Yes.
Gallery podcast.
Hey, I know, hey, hey, oh.